I lived in Bangalore after Swami got us married in Vrindavan, and we lived in Bangalore for 10 years before suddenly out of the blue one afternoon in Puttaparthi, he called my husband and I and said, pack up your bags and go to America. My husband didn't have a job here or anything. He was very happily settled in Bangalore. We were working very much in Swami's organization together. We were very happy there. We had twin sons. They were 4 years old. So we were there, and it came as sort of a lightning out of the blue. So anyway, when we got married in Vrindavan, one of the things that when I was a young girl, of course, here it is different, but in India, and especially in the early 70s, late 70s, when I got married, when there is a young girl in the family, everybody starts suggesting alliances for this girl, wherever you go, when you're in final year in the college or in the second or third year. And Swami did the same. Every time he used to come, at that time he used to come every month to my parents' house for dinner. So from 1 month to the other, every month he would say, have you found a boy for Geeta? To my parents. So it had become kind of a joke, and I would say, no boy, Swami, no boy and all that. So then he would say, what kind of boy? Why you want some fantastic boy? He said, no, Swami, I want a Sai devotee boy. So there is no boy. In those days, there were not so many devotees, So the joke, as young girls used to say, there are either really old people or really young people. There was nobody that you could marry. So there is no boys. So anyway, he suddenly out of the blue did find one boy for me, Swami did, and got us married. And then 3 years later, when I had the children, I had twin sons, he told me to come to Puttaparthi in the 3rd month so that he could name them. So we went that was also very sweet, Again, talking about omnipresence, after they were born on the 15th day, we wanted to take them to see Swami, from the home. So Swami was in Bangalore at that time. And it was Ganesh Chaturthi day, and my husband and I, my parents, we took the 2 babies to Vrindavan, and Swami came out. And in those days, the cars, we could park it in front of the hostel. So we were sitting there, standing outside. I think it was a very windy day. So from the gate, Swami said, get inside the car, he said. And he gave darshan for Ganesh Chaturthi. And then he came to me, said, sit inside the car, it's very windy for the babies, he said. Now, as he was walking, he had told me many times during my pregnancy that once the babies are born, I will give them their names. So I was standing next to my mother holding the babies. My husband was holding one boy, the other. And my mother was saying that, Swami might ask you now about the names. So I was a little irritated with my mother and said, don't bring up any names and all now in the street, I mean, for me, the darshan line, standing outside, in the lines of old Bangalore Vrindavan thing, I was saying, don't bring up names now in front of Swamis when we are standing outside in the darshan line. I don't want them to be named here in the street. So my mother got very irritated. She said, we are sitting here for darshan along with so many devotees, and you're saying you're sitting in the street. So we were having this little tiff, just as Swami was walking. And then finally we nudged each other and said, be quiet, be quiet. So Swami came and said, get inside the car, it's very windy. And very sweetly he got into the driver's seat of the car, turned around and materialized Vibhuti and put it, on the babies. We were sitting in the back seat. And then he looks at me and says, I'm not going to name your children in the street. Bring them to Puttaparthi in the 3rd month I will name them. So anyway, 3rd month came along. See, I know when I tell you that it kind of feels like so amazing, but at the same time, if you go home and think about it, he knows our every thought, word and action at all times of the day. We are not aware of it, and that's what the problem is. This is the reason why I'm sharing it, not so much to just talk about myself, because I know who would care to bring me to South Carolina to hear me, if it was anything about me. It's because it's about him that you take the time to do that. So these are all just his glories that I am conveying to you. So we went in the 3rd month. And at that time, he gave a very beautiful message. I'm sure there are many mothers here with young children. He called me in the interview room and named them very sweetly, Arun and Varun. And till that time, my husband and I had kept a blank mind. We didn't even give them a nickname, nothing. I used to write down their formula, I used to feed them with formula, and I used to write twin 1 and twin 2 to keep the longest time. It's twin 1 and 2. So the 3rd month. And then he told me, so today I'm naming your boys, You're a mother, you're a new mother, and all mothers have a lot of, wishes for their children. So today you ask me what you want and I will give it to you. So what a nice blank check. Of course your mind goes through all the list of things, but then I said, no, Swami, all I want is for them to be devoted, have bhakti and shraddha towards you. That's all I want. So he said, yes, that is there. You want bhakti and shraddha towards me for your children. But how will they get it? I said, if you bless them, Swami. He said, I might bless them, but it is not so easy to get bhakti and shraddha. He said, it is the parents' responsibility to develop that. So he said, do you know how you can do that? I said, if you tell me, I will try. So he said, well, as parents, you must think of these children as your neighbor's jewels. So I said, as my neighbor's jewels. He said, do you know why? If you borrow jewelry from your neighbor to wear it, you will be doubly careful because you don't want to lose it and go back and tell your neighbor that you've lost it. Your own jewelry, if you lose, your husband will buy you another one. But if it's your neighbor's jewel, you will take care of it. So that is how you have to take care of your children. As long as they are in your care, you have to look after them with the best of your ability, sincerity and devotion that you can. But when it is time for them to go, because neighbor's jewels you always have to give it back. You can't keep it permanently. When it is time for you to leave them and they have to go out into the world and come out here to do seva for me, at that time, don't regret that the children are going away from you. You have to let them go with detachment. If you practice that, then they will learn bhakti and shraddha. So it is not an easy lesson, but one tries. So anyway, these two children were 3 months old when he named them. And at that time he made one promise. He said, you don't worry about them. From now on, they are my children and I will look after them. You just have to do the physical duties of a mother. We came back to Bangalore and a couple of weeks later, the Glaxo company, which was the formula that my children used to have, went on a strike. There was no Glaxo. In the beginning, you could get it here and there. This was the incident that Swami asked me to narrate. So this Glaxo was slowly becoming more and more difficult to purchase everything. And I had twin children and you can imagine, we used to go through the Glaxo cartons very, quickly. And my husband was a very, very strict man. There was some Glaxo available in black market, but he refused to buy it. He said, no. If just because we have money, we purchase it in black market, what about the people who don't have money, who cannot buy it? We are encouraging black marketeering in Bangalore, so I will not buy. So slowly the tension at home got really worse, because they were very allergic to any other. They were allergic to cow's milk and so on. So what am I going to do? There was no milk, and slowly the little, few cartons of Glaxo that was finishing, and finally I was down to one. And my husband and I it was a Saturday morning and we had a big argument. Because he said, no, that is adharmic. I'm not going to go and buy Glaxo from black marketing. And he did not want me to ask any people that we knew. Because some of the pharmacies were hoarding, the Glaxo boxes and selling it at higher prices. He didn't want me to do that either. So we got into a little bit of an argument. And I said, you are talking about your dharma, but what about my dharma as a mother? I have to feed my children. There's no more Glaxo at home. There's one carton. He said, oh, you keep talking so much about Swami. I'm sure these are some discussions that happens in every home. So I said, oh, you keep talking so much about Swami. You go and pray to him. I'm not going to do what I'm not supposed to do. So I got very irritated with him and I said, oh, Swami is sitting there in Puttaparthi talking to those college boys. You think he's here? I was very sort of upset with him. I did go into the puja room and I said, look, you put me through all of this. You told me that these kids are yours. Where is the Glaxo now? This man is not going to bring me any Glaxo. All this, I just spoke to Swami's picture in my puja room. I said, you're sitting there in Puttaparthi and there's no Glaxo now. Anyway, I came out. Then much later around noon, my husband came back and I suddenly heard him. We were living upstairs. He says, I heard him calling my name. He said, come here. Were you expecting something? So what had happened to him, he went to that other suburb and he was able to get 2 cans of Glaxo. He was coming back from there and right in the middle of Bangalore, there is the city town hall. There was a traffic light. He had stopped. He had gone on a scooter actually. So he stopped there and there was an elderly gentleman who had parked his ambassador car next to him at the traffic light. When the traffic light turned to green, the car wouldn't start. So the elderly man asked my husband, can you help me push the car to the side? So he parked his scooter, pushed the car to the side, and he tried to start it, it wouldn't start. So the man said, I'll go and telephone my son-in-law to come and help me. Then they started to talk a little. He said, which way are you headed? So my husband said, I'm going to Jayanagar. So the man said, you're going to Jayanagar, then can I ask you a favor? So my husband said, yes, well, what can I do? So he said, look, I have to deliver a package urgently, but I won't now because of the car. So if I give you the address, can you please take this box to somebody in Jayanagar? So my husband said, sure, write me the address and I will take it. In the meantime, the policeman came and said, come on, you guys have to move because it was a major intersection. You're standing there and talking. So he quickly wrote it. He took the piece of paper and put it in his pocket. And they took out the box from the car. He tied it to the scooter at the back and my husband left. When he arrived in Jayanagar, he stopped the car, took out the address from his pocket to read and to see who he had to deliver. And to his utter amazement, he found my name, Geeta, and our home address on the paper. So he said, who is this man? I don't even know him and he has given me a box. So he again read it a couple of times, thought maybe he had misplaced the paper, looked in his pocket. It was the only piece of paper written in pencil. So he came and he was calling me from downstairs. Geeta, he was said, were you expecting some package today? I said, no, what package? I wasn't interested in any package. Did you get the Glaxo? He said, no, something happened and he told me this whole story. Some old man stopped me and, I had to help him and all. I said, look, why are you telling me? Just tell me the main thing. So he said, he said, look, it's some strange package this strange man has given me and our house address is there. So I said, let me call my mother and see if she has sent anything. So I phoned my mother. She lives 10 minutes away. She says, why would I be sending a package from town hall, near town hall? I live 10 minutes. I didn't send anything. Then, being very practical, open it and see what's in there, So we cut, there was a string tied, we cut it open and there were 24 cans of Glaxo in that box. 24 cans of Glaxo. We were just so taken aback and we just put it in the puja room and it was on a Saturday morning. The following weekend we went to Puttaparthi. We knew who had sent, he had heard my scolding him and my husband scolding me. He had heard our whole family conversation. One thing you realize when you become a Sai devotee, that you have no privacy. So we arrived in Puttaparthi, the old Puttaparthi days. There were arches, the Sai Kulwant was not there, there was just sand. Swami came out for afternoon darshan. We were sitting there, my mother and I, with the two babies. And he came out very nicely and stood in front of me and said, when did you come? He asked me. And I had just tears in my eyes. I was just crying because it was just such a wonderful experience of love, I couldn't even express. So my mother answered and said, we just came. And he said, very happy, went and put some vibhuti on my two sons' foreheads, who was like 4 months old at that time. And he walked away. And as he walked away a few feet from me, I looked at my mother and said, I lost the opportunity. I didn't even thank him for that box of Glaxo, carton of Glaxo. My mother said, yes, see, we become emotional, we didn't even thank him. Again, in his wonderful mercy, he just went few feet, stopped, turned around and came back. And very sweetly in Telugu, he says, Pillalu paal dorkinda. Did the children get the milk? The following morning, he called us in for an interview. And he said, see, when there is dharmic husband and devoted wife, how can I not hear the prayer? That is how the Lord responds. When we lead our life trying our best, maybe we won't succeed all the time, trying to be as dharmic as we possibly can, and as devoted as we possibly can. These are the two things that you were saying when I started off. That with Namasmarana, with devotion, with good company, and trying to practice his message. He doesn't even ask us to be completely successful. He says, at least just try, take one step, and I will take 100. You don't even have to take 10. So when you start trying to do that, then you can feel his very, very tangible presence in your body. So at that time when they interviewed him, he said, see, I told you they were my children. Would I not look after them? That too, you are the mother, you are asking for milk for children. I am the cosmic mother. I have the children all over the world. You think I don't respond to them? But the responsibility also lies on your shoulder. in how you lead your life. So that happened many, many years ago. Now my sons are 23 years old, both getting ready to graduate this year. When he suddenly asked us to come to the US, I did not want to come. I had never been away. I could leave my parents. I could not leave him. I had never been, since the day I was born, I had never been away from his physical proximity, and I couldn't imagine moving away. So at that time, he had told me that you have only seen this 5-foot form. I want you to see the cosmic Swami. And at that time, I was saying, I don't want to know any cosmic Swami. I'm quite happy with this 5-foot form. No? That's okay for people who are outside. But he said, no, you have to go. Otherwise, how will you grow? If your faith, and Swami loves the example, he says, you put a nail in the wall and you hammer it and then you hang a picture. But before you hang a picture of Swami, you shake the nail to make sure the picture won't fall off. So you have faith, you have devotion. But unless you go away and your faith is shaken and you're tried and tested, how will I know that you're ready to go to the next class? You can't be for the whole life in first grade. I'm your mother. No mother likes to see her child in first grade when they're 15 years old. They want to keep moving forward, want to go forward, go to college, do PhD, whatever it is. So I don't want to see you in first grade all the time either. You have to grow up and move. So he said, you go and see that cosmic Swami. I didn't know what he meant. The first year or two when I came to the US, I was very close-minded. I didn't want to see a cosmic Swami. I only wanted to go back to Whitefield. I wanted to only go back to Vrindavan and only to Puttaparthi. My whole time was spent in how can we go next. And he gave me the punishment of saying, don't come back for 4 years. That was my test. He said, don't come back for 4 years and no pestering your husband. He told me. So for 4 years, every day my count was, the day the 4th year was completed, I started pestering him. But that was the test that you had to go through. And then slowly as the days went by, I suddenly started to meet people who had never seen Swami but who had become devotees. Who had just become devotees by reading books, by doing seva. And that's when I started to see Swami's wonderful glory in the people far away who had not had the opportunities that I had. And that's when I started to realize Swami's presence in a very different way. So those were the wonderful experiences that one goes through, but at the same time you think that this is true for every one of you. I'm sure if I ask you, you can tell me 100 things where you have seen His presence in your own life. So I started off talking about Swami's omnipresence, and she brought me what we're talking a little seriously. I'll finish off with this one little thing. He's always there. He's here now. He's listening to everything I say. Every time I have spoken and gone back to India, he always tells me what I spoke about. And the first time when I said, Swami, I don't want to speak, after that 1996 talk, and I said, Swami, I've spoken once. I don't want to speak anymore. And he said that the love you enjoyed was not for free. You have to share it. And then he said, oh, so you think you speak? When I said that I don't know to speak, so Nuva Matladedi, he asked, are you the one who speaks? And then he said, just be a tape recorder. When I turn it on, speak. When I shut it off, close your mouth. So ever since then, I leave it to him. I don't make any notes, only because I want to be open to whatever he wants me to say to everyone. And every time I go back, he tells me every incident that I have spoken about. And sometimes he says, I know you were thinking how many times to tell the rose incident in your head. But I wanted you to tell because there was somebody in the audience who wanted to hear it. So he knows each and everyone's thoughts. In fact, I was there in November, December when I went for this Ladies' Day thing. Another thing that happened when I finished speaking on the Ladies' Day thing, my mother-in-law had also come to Parthi, to spend the birthday celebrations there. And on 24th morning, after the birthday, she usually was always a little reluctant to come to Puttaparthi because every time she went back to Bangalore, she would get sick. But that time, she said, oh, you have come, and my husband's elder brother who lives in California had also come. So she said, oh, you are there, Prakash is there, my daughter is there. So I'm going to come, even if I get sick, it's okay. I want to see Swami's 80th birthday, the glory of 80th birthday. So many people from all over the world are coming. So she had come and we had all spent time together. On 24th morning, she left a little bit earlier than me, and she was going to go in the morning back to Bangalore. And I said, I'll come back tomorrow. She said, no, you have darshan and come, I will go back. But that afternoon, suddenly, I also decided to go back to Bangalore because I wanted to spend 2 days with my in-laws. I arrived in Bangalore, I stayed with my parents and I called her and said, I also came back. She said, very good. Then you come tomorrow morning for breakfast. She talked. At 8:30 at night, she cooked dinner. She was a lady who was the very embodiment of this Namasmarana. That's all. I remember my mother-in-law had been married for 28 years. The only thing I can remember of my mother-in-law is always in the puja, and the first thing in the morning, she spent 2 hours there. That was her home to her. So she said, tomorrow morning, just as soon as I finish puja, you come and have breakfast. I talked to her. She had dinner with my father-in-law, and went to bed. Got up at about 10 o'clock in the night. She had just gone into her room. Called my father-in-law and said that she's having a little hard time breathing. So he put some vibhuti in the water that she keeps for Swami every day. She drank it and she passed away. So after 13 days, my husband came and we went back to Puttaparthi, and he called us and talked to us at that time. And very sweetly he narrated the whole thing, how she had cooked dinner and how she had had the vibhuti prasadam. He said, you should not feel sorry. She finished her responsibilities and she's gone. And at that time, I happened to tell him that I was coming here to South, because he always asks me, where are you speaking next? And I said, I'm going to South Carolina, and the next couple of months, every month I'm going. I mentioned all the places. So he said, oh, very happy. And in Telugu he said, Anandaga Poira, go happily. I said, what shall I tell everybody I see Swami when I see them? He said, tell them that Swami wants only 2 things, love and devotion. That is all Swami wants. He doesn't want anything else. So with that message, I came out, and a couple of years ago when I was speaking, in the middle of my talk, I had started to cough. The reason I'm saying is that he's always here listening to everything and seeing everything we do. I had started to cough in the middle of my talk, so I stopped and I drank some water, and then I continued to speak. So the next time I went to Puttaparthi and he talked to me, he said, oh, you have now grown up, you have become a big girl now. So I was very happy. I thought, Swami find it, because he always is teasing me and still treats me like the small child that I used to do when he used to come to my parents' house. So he said, Swami, I have 2 grown-up children now. So he said, no, you have become a big girl. Now you have got the courage to drink water in front of me. Because can you imagine, if Swami is sitting there, will we pick up a cup of coffee or water and drink in front of him while he is sitting and talking? I don't think, at least I don't have the courage to do that. If I can physically see him in that chair to drink. I had actually turned away from the picture and I had a couple of sips of water. He said, now you have grown up enough to drink water in front of me. Reminding me that there is a Sabha Maryada. When you are standing in front of people and you're standing in front of Swami in his presence, there is a certain way that you behave. That you give respect to the audience, not interrupt your talk, drink water and coffee and continue to talk. He reminded me of that a couple of years ago. So just to let you know that he is here, that is why I address him as my ever-present Swami. Just to remind myself that I remember that he is here. When we were about 9 or 10 years old, Swami, or maybe a little bit older than that actually, I'm very poor at remembering date. So please excuse me. And I also keep going back and forth between childhood and adulthood and all that. So I don't know if it sounds disorganized to all of you. But Swami was in Vrindavan, and suddenly out of the blue he said that we will all go to Horsley Hills for a vacation. So everybody get ready and be ready in the morning. At 5 o'clock we will leave. So you can imagine the excitement, to go with Swami on a vacation. It was our summer holidays at that time. At that time, Swami spent 9 months in Bangalore and 3 months in Parthi. That was how the time was divided. He only spent the 3 or 4 weeks at the time of festivals there, and only 4 festivals were celebrated: birthday, Shivratri, Guru Purnima, and Dasara, Navratri. So that was the only time that he spent in Puttaparthi, but he would be in Bangalore the rest of the time. So he spent a lot of time in Bangalore while I was growing up. So he suddenly said, let's go on a vacation. So he said, be ready at 5 o'clock. So if you have traveled with Swami, if he says 5 o'clock, you're better off ready there at 3:30 or 4 in the morning, because he will be gone and you've lost the opportunity. So we were all very excited, packed all our clothes, and we were there in Vrindavan at about 4 in the morning. And Swami, sure enough, left at 5, and we all drove to the Horsley Hills there, near Surroundings. And we stayed there for 10 days. There was a little house that somebody had given Swami. So in that house, Swami occupied one room. The rest of the place, we all basically slept. So Swami would retire around 8:30, very considerate host, would retire around 8:30 or 9 so that we could all spread out our bedding and so on and sleep, because you can't spread out the bedding. Swami, if he comes out of the room, he'll have to walk on everybody's beds. And then we would be up at 2 or 3 in the morning before Swami got up, so the whole house could be cleaned by the time he came out of the room. Anyway, we spent a wonderful 10 days there. And at that time, Professor Kasturi also had come. Professor Kasturi came to Swami around early 60s. So he would very eagerly follow Swami everywhere because he was, writing the Satyam Shivam Sundaram and was collecting a lot of information. So we were there. 10 days went by very quickly. Swami would go for walks with all of us. In the evenings, there would be bhajans, we would be singing. Small group of people, maybe about 35, 40 people, that's all. It was a very small group. So he would spend a lot of time. The whole day he would spend with everyone. In the evenings, we would go. And even during the bhajans, Swami himself would lead the bhajans. Many times on the men's side. So it was very nice, beautiful discourses. Now, there was a problem. There was a water shortage there. So the water had to be brought from 3 miles for all your washing the clothes and dishes. The water had to be brought from a well about 3 miles away. For drinking purposes, there was some water. There was a well which we used, but the water was low. So there were 2 buffaloes, and the caretaker of that building would take the buffaloes in the morning over about 3 miles away and fill 2 huge drums, like big containers with water, and tie it on the backs of the 2 buffaloes, with one hanging on each side. So 4 drums at a time. They would actually transport the water for 3 miles. So these buffaloes all day from sunrise to sunset were going back and forth, bringing water and filling up a big tank behind the house. And that water would be used for everybody's clothes and dishes and so on. Because we were 35, 40 of us, a lot of water was being consumed. So these buffaloes would go back and forth, and who really worries about all that, right? When Swami is there, you are worried about what Swami does, what Swami is doing. So we were all very focused on Swami. 10 days went by, and of course the house and the surroundings were kept beautiful for Swami, his little garden. And the last day, Swami said, tomorrow morning we will be going back to Bangalore 10 o'clock, everybody be ready. So everyone was ready, and he said, by 4:45, everybody sit in the car so that we can leave at a certain time. So everybody was in the car, and Swami also came out, everybody ready. He asked everyone, there were some 7 or 8 cars that had followed him. And then he was about to get into the car when he stopped and he said, wait, and he started to go to the back of the house. So immediately everybody was like, oh my gosh, why is he going in the back? The back of the house, nobody had bothered to really clean that much. The front is what Swami is coming in the front and go. So why is he going in the back? Because in the back was only the shed, where these 2 buffaloes were tied. So there's a lot of hay and all that for the thing, and not kept very nicely at the back. Why is he going in the back? So he said, but nobody had, the courage to get out of the car and see what he's doing. So he went to the back. Then Kasturi got out because he was curious to see why Swami was going. I was a small kid. I was the only kid in that group. My cousins were a little bit older than me. I also, and Swami used to gently give me a little bit more license. Because we were all family members at that time. So we didn't have this very strict segregation of men and women and all that. So I also got out. I wanted to see what Swami was doing. I went from the other side of the building. And we saw Swami walking towards the shed. And both Kasturi and I met at the back of the building. So we were both saying, what is he doing? What is he doing? And he walked up to the shed, and these 2 buffaloes were tied, And I can never forget that beautiful scene. Swami went up and actually materialized vibhuti and put it on the foreheads of the buffaloes, water buffaloes. And very sweetly in Telugu said, you have done a lot of seva for me these past 10 days. Talking to them as though he was talking to any one of us. Saying, you have done a lot of seva for me. You have gone back and forth, bringing water for me. And we could see, we were quite close, we could see tears just rolling down the eyes of those 2 buffaloes. Just the Creator and the creation there having a beautiful conversation. So he was saying, don't, and patting it on the cheek and saying, don't cry. I'll come and see you again soon. You have done a lot of seva. Thank you. And put the vibhuti on the foreheads of the buffaloes, and then, without even turning around, saying, you too, why are you not in the car? Of course, very many years ago when I was 8 or 9 years old, I didn't know that I would be sharing it with so many devotees from all over the world. So that was an experience that both Kasturi and I had at the same time. And we came back and sat down, and I can never forget the image of Swami thanking these two buffaloes for bringing the water, which none of us had even really bothered to think about. So certainly today, I'm sure after hearing the story, you will all realize how much of effort the organizers have put into organizing something so wonderful, so that you could all participate in Swami's glory. Swami says, no day is a holy day unless you spend it in the thought of God. And they have created a beautiful holy day for us today. So, thank you all.